If I may have your attention, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming to this very special Luncheons with Leaders program. It's our next installment, and we have a number of wonderful people here, all the leadership fellows, of course, and our very special guests. We have Ralph Hallenstein right here at the head table. Ralph, thank you so much for coming. I believe we have mentors here too, don't we? David and Deb, are you here? Mentors? Where are our mentors? Oh, there we go. We have a mentor here. Thanks for. Whoops, where? Sorry. Where? Okay, well, we also have our VIPs here who are serving in the cabinet of the Hallenstein Center for Presidential Studies. We appreciate your service. Thank you very much for being here today. Now I'm going to applaud you. You do a lot of the work. I think one of the things that's so impressive about this cabinet, and this is something I brag about whenever I go out and talk about the Hallenstein Center, you know, these are people who are not just interested in writing a check and then going home. These are people who want to mentor our young people and our future leaders. And I think that's what makes you all really an exceptional group of people. So I appreciate that very much. Well, speaking of special people, I want to say something about Mike Flanagan here, our speaker today. Now, as you know, Mike is Brian's dad, and so Brian came to me a couple of days ago, looking a little sheepish, but he said, "Please, would you mind if I introduce Dad?" And I said, "That'll be just fine, Brian. Not a problem at all, because you know all the stories that I don't, so you're going to make the introduction a lot more interesting." But Mike Flanagan and I actually go back to about 1993 when I worked for Governor Engler. And I want to say this. As you know, I never politicize these meetings, and by this comment, I don't mean to politicize now. But when our state had the opportunity back in the early 90s to go through major education reform, John Engler and other leaders in Lansing at that time had people in their heads who they knew would be open to reform, who would go against the status quo and work their heart out to make change. And Mike Flanagan was on that short list. So when I got to know Mike back in 1993, I was immediately impressed with his courage as a leader, his vision. And he's the guy who knows the very obvious thing. Children, as we used to say then, and I think you've heard the saying at some point in your lives, children may be only 25% of our population, but they're 100% of our future. So we better get it right with our kids. And this guy is working his heart out to try to get it right for the kids in Michigan. So I just wanted to say those personal words. Thank you for being here today. And I'm going to turn over the formal introduction now to your son, Brian Flanagan, my good friend and really the day-to-day program director of the Leadership Academy. Brian.
Thanks, please. I've been thinking about how best to introduce my dad this week, and I don't know if there's anything more challenging than making a serious introduction of your own father. Because as you'll see here in a minute, I'm going to tell you about some of his accomplishments, but he's still the same guy that used to embarrass us on our family road trips by taking his shirt off at the rest stops to try to get some vitamin D. I read a few articles, so I knew that I was up to date on all the goings-on at MDE, all the recent goings-on, and there were words associated with my dad, like visionary and change agent, and at the same time, he's still the same guy that at the dinner table often would have food on his face, and it's you know, so it is a difficult task to make a serious introduction to your dad, but it's also an honor. So as you know, my father is State Superintendent of Public Instruction for Michigan, and what that means is he leads the Department of Education, Michigan Department of Education. He chairs the state school board, and he also advises the school board, the governor, and the legislature on all public education issues. In his 4-year tenure at Michigan, he has had a whole series of achievements, but I'll just name a few that he's made Michigan really a national leader in high school academic standards, in merit exams for graduating students, so we get a sense of just how college ready our graduating students are, and also in district-driven reform, so probably hear a little bit about Project Reimagine. But Dad is trying to get the districts to think through ways to make schools more efficient, more proficient, to improve early ed and do a lot of other things. There's a whole list of accolades that that I could name that I'm not going to do today, but he has been superintendent at the local level, at the county level, and he has been the director, the executive director of the statewide association for superintendents. So this has been his career work. And I'll just conclude by saying two things that I think I admire most about my dad's work, having observed him for 29 years, only consciously, I guess, for maybe 20 of them. But something I've noticed is he's always willing to take risks and go out on a limb. And we've seen that most recently at the State Department of Education when he went out on a limb for high school education standards, high school academic standards, when not everyone was on board with that, very few people were. He went out on a limb when he placed a financial manager in Detroit Public Schools because he knew that could hurt his reputation. He goes out on a limb when he grapples with MEA over things like teacher compensation and the health care plan most recently. And it can definitely be lonely out there on that limb. So that's the first thing I'll say. And the second is that through all of Dad's years of service, at the local level, the county level, and now the state level, he is a mission-driven individual. And I think if you look at his long track record, you'll see that at the heart of all of it is this understanding that all students can learn, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of how involved their parents are. Those things can't be an excuse. And the second thing is that our students have to be prepared for our changing context. And those are two things that I think you'll see woven throughout his entire career. So he takes risks, and he's mission-driven, and he's earned a lot of respect across the state for those reasons. And yet he's still the same guy who once at an extended family event dove out a bathroom window onto the deck where everyone was seated at the exact same moment that the Beatles were saying he came in through the bathroom window. To get a laugh. So anyway, thankfully we don't have any bathroom windows here today, but with that image in your minds, I'll welcome my dad up to the podium.